Good here, and today I'm going to teach you how to draft properly in Arena, or at least we're going to try and get the best possible draft in Arena. So for the purpose of this video, we already bought an Arena run. You can either buy an Arena one with 150 gold, very easy to farm 150 gold, or a Euro 79 depending on your region. If it's NA, it's probably like $2 something, I don't know. Anyway, why is Arena good? Because Arena can literally skyrocket your profit. So you pay 150 gold, but you have the potential to get back 200, 300 gold. And to do that, the first thing you need to do is draft a good deck. And before you draft a good deck, you have to identify which are the good Arena classes. Now in Arena you have 3 options to pick from. My options are Gul'dan, Thrall, and Uther. So you have Gul'dan, Thrall, Uther, Malfurion, Jaina, and Grommash, Valera. So you have Warlock, Druid, Rogue, Shaman, Paladin, Warrior, Hunter. Those are your classes you can pick for. If I missed one, I'm sorry. I'll go over it again on the top of my head. Anyway, so out of these 3, I think the best one is probably Uther, even though the Paladin pick, even though Warlocks now are pretty good in Arena. Their average value has gone up, but I'm still going to try and pick Paladin because the class cards are actually very, very good. So the difference between a very good hero class in Arena and a decent hero class in Arena is all to do with common cards. So if you go look at Paladin's common cards or basic cards, you'll see that the average value of the basic cards is very good. Stuff like True Silver Champion and Consecrate is fantastic. Whereas Warlock has Hellfire. Hellfire is also very good, but it kills your minions as well. So you don't want your minions to die in an arena, but you want to trade valuably. So we're going to start straight away off with the picking. And in this stage of the arena draft, the first few picks you really want to you want to make sure you have an early curve. Like, your objective here is to get as many early curves as 2 drops, 3 drops, 1 drops as possible, just to tempo out. Because Arena right now, 95% of the wins in Arena are due to tempo. So the player who has more tempo, turns 1, 2, and 3, usually wins the game. I know it's sad, but even in Constructed right now, that's how the game operates. So between Summoning Stone, Dragon Egg, and Muster for Battle, we're going to pick Muster for Battle because 3 mana for 3 Silver Hand Recruits plus a 1/4 1 mana weapon is fantastic value. And you can also clear a few minions with a weapon. So we're going to pick Muster for Battle. Now our next pick is a bit tricky because we're not getting any good drops. But this will happen to you in Arena. This will happen to you. The only 2 good picks here are Seal of Champions and Silver Moon Guardian. I'm not much of a buff man myself. I prefer playing minions on board and then buffing them up when I realize they can be sticky. And between Flying Machine, Silver Moon Guardian, and Seal of Champions, I think I'm going to pick Silver Moon Guardian. The phone is ringing. I'm stopped recording. Welcome back. Sorry about that. I had to cut the video because my phone was ringing, and we're going to ignore that and any other distractions that we get from now on, and going to stick to the video. So where was I? I was saying that Silver Moon Guardian is a bad pick, but our choices were pretty bad. This is going to happen to you in Arena. The odds are that you will get like some decent to bad cards instead of a lot of good cards the whole time. And then in scenarios like those, you have to identify which of the 3 picks is better, or if none of them are good, which of the 3 picks suit your deck currently or in the best way. So another good thing is making sure you find deck synergy. Right now we only have 2 card picks, so we're not really worried about deck synergy. We're worried more about tempo and early game. But later on, as the deck starts to fill itself in, we're going to start looking for mid-game, deck synergy, removal, and card draw. Right now we're just worried about getting or concerned about getting the best hand early on as possible. Between these three picks, Injured Blade Master is not the best pick. Goblin Sapper, it's a sticky 3-drop. It's not the best 3-drop, it doesn't have very good stats, but sometimes you can get a lot of value from it. In my last arena run, I picked this as a rogue, and it turned out to be a very good pick. I also had Twilight Drake in my hand, in my deck. I think for the purposes of these three picks, probably the most value out of these cards is Twilight Drake, so I'm going to go ahead and pick Twilight Drake, even though I could pick Sapper. So this is the question between Cogmaster and Murloc Knight. And Murloc Knight, obviously the better pick here. So when you look at these, sometimes you'll get obvious choices like these. And when I say obvious, is because Murloc Knight's arena value is about 1 billion times percent better than Cogmaster's arena value. Even though you can get some good value from this guy, this card is definitely ridiculous. It's ridiculous in constructed, and it's ridiculous in arena. Sometimes you will get cards that are very good in ranked, and I do recommend you do pick these cards. Cards like Murloc Knight are always good. So we look like we have a pretty good mid-game curve, a lot of high 4-drop thing here. Card draw or another 3-drop? Card draw or 3-drop? I think I'm going to go with a 3-drop. We might get another opportunity for card draw later. I'm not even going to think about this Venture Core Mercenary, especially because the drawback sometimes can be far too great, and when you don't have enough tempo or board control, it's not the best card, especially for new players or non-experienced arena players. I wouldn't say I'm a non-experienced arena player, but I'm definitely not the most experienced arena player. I have a lot of arena knowledge, but I'm a decent player. My average win rate is about 7 to 8 wins every run. Sometimes I get lucky with 9 wins, 10 wins. But I don't advise you take cards with a high risk, low reward in arena, especially if you're a new player. And I'm not going to do that. I would have gone with the card draw if my deck was a bit more complete, but since we're missing a lot of early curve, I'm going to pick the Ironfur Grizzly. So that's something you have to identify, like in which scenarios should you pick what. So this, again, not the best draws, not the best draft. Voodoo Doctor is a terrible card. Hand of Protection, situational at best. Situational cards can be rewarding, but it's situational, and I think Ancient Brewmaster fits our deck a lot better. You can return a Murloc Knight that's about to die, you could return a Drake that's about to die or silenced, you can return, I don't know, the Silvermoon Guardian that lost its Divine Shield. So right now you have to look for deck synergy and mid-game curve, which is what we're looking for. We're missing a lot of early game tempo. A lot of it. We've only drafted 4 drops and 3 drops, and I think we're going to draft another 4 drop. Keeper of Uldaman, we're going to get greedy here. Keeper of Uldaman is a brilliant card. Can deal with a lot of high power minions, like powerhouse minions, like the Boulder Fist Ogre on turn 6, or the War Golem on turn 7, which is stuff you should be expecting to see in arena. Eye for an Eye, not the best secret. Lance Carrier could be something I was considering to kill off good stuff, but I think I'm going to go with Keeper of Uldaman. Especially because it helps if I draft shitty stuff, you know? Again, Annoyatron, Throw more Force here, Dragonite Crusher, doesn't really fit the curve well. But I think I'm going to draft the Draconid Crusher because it just out of the 3, I think it's the best pick. Thromar Farseer dies to 2 drops and removal. It's not the best 3-drop there is. Annoyatron is annoying, but it has no board presence, and out of these 3, Draconid Crusher is probably the best pick. So now we get a decent pick. And I'm definitely going to go with the Ogre Brute here. So again, these cards, not the best cards, these 3 cards, but you do have to realize that you play with the cards you have. It's just like in poker, you play with the cards you're dealt with in blackjack. You have to make meets with what you have. So in arena, if you do get these things, make sure you get the most value out of your draft, and don't rush your draft. Something I don't advise to do is never rush your draft. Unless you're very experienced and you know what to draft, how to draft, etc, etc. If you're new, never rush your draft. Always look carefully at your cards in your deck and make sure you concentrate a lot and pick the best deck possible. So Tomb Spider Discover a Beast is actually, the average beast value is not so good. There are other better tribes or races in Hearthstone out there. Beasts are not the best tribe or race. Flesh-Eating Ghoul would be good on a turn 3 if I had a 2-drop that cleared something. I don't have a 2-drop yet. I think Ogre Brute is a lot stickier, even though it's high risk, low reward. The stats make up for it. So the stats do compensate the high risk, low reward. And it's a powerhouse of a 3-drop, so we're picking Ogre Brute. Armored Warhorse, Battlecry, reveal minion in each deck. If yours costs more, gain charge. We do have a lot of 4-drop, 5-drops, no 5-drop, a lot of high mid-range cost minions. Although I think I might just go with the Divine Favor here. I'm not sure. This looks like the kind of deck that doesn't curve out. So looks like the kind of deck that has a lot of cards kept in hand with a lot of high value mid-range stuff, but doesn't always drop them on the turn. So I might actually go with the Warhorse, because our deck is already looking like something more slow. So yeah, I'm gonna definitely go with the Warhorse here. And the Technician beats these 2 cards, no doubt about it. Ironforge Rifleman is absolute garbage, and Tournament Attendee is absolute garbage. It dies to most classes that can do 1 damage. Black-Ring Technician is good, it even synergizes well with that Twilight Drake. So this is what I'm talking about. Looking for synergy. Not only is this sticky 3-drop, it's the best out of the 3 picks, but also synergizes well with Twilight Drake. So we don't have any 5-drops, and Gurubashi Berserker is a decent 5-drop. Lord of the Ring is a bad pick. Murloc Knight's a fantastic pick, but we already have like a high 4-mana curve. I would usually recommend you take this, but since I don't have any 5-mana curves minions, I'm going to take the Gurubashi Berserker. Definitely the Scarlet Crusader here. I explained before, buffs are best on early game when you have sticky minions early game. Stuff like Haunted Creeper values a lot from buffs. I don't have any early game sticky minions, so I'm definitely going with the Crusader. It would work well with Crusader or buff. So now we finally drafted 2-drop, and I'm not even going to consider these 2 cards because this is a 2-drop. So we're just going to pick the Mani Berserker here. No thought process involved because we have no early tempo. We need early tempo. And since our 4-mana curve is already looking very high, and we don't want tournament attendees because they're absolute garbage, I'm going to pick the Frost Elemental. Burly Rock Jaw Trog is a very good card, but Frost Elemental fits our curve better and fits our deck better, I think, because it's a very slow deck, a very control-ish deck, and its effect is a more control-ish like effect. If you want to freeze a character to gain yourself a turn so you can move stuff, it's a pretty good effect. Maiden in the Lake, your hero power costs 1, and Flesh-Eating Ghoul. So I think we're going to pick the Ghoul here. Between more tempo and hero power and early game, I think I'm going to pick the Ghoul. The problem with Maiden in the Lake is its stats don't compensate for its effect, and on Paladin you really don't you don't need the minus mana for your hero power, and we already have really high curve on 4-drops. Like, I think I'm going to go ahead and pick the Flesh-Eating Ghoul. These 3 cards, this is actually, Ogre Magi is very good with Consecrate, but we haven't drafted any removal whatsoever, so we're not going to draft this. If we did have Consecrate, I might have considered drafting this. This card, Magma Rage, is absolute garbage. Ice Rager, its brother, would have been better here. I wouldn't even consider drafting it anyway. Spectral Knight is a very sticky minion because it can't be targeted by hero powers or spells, and its average stats make it so that it doesn't die to your average 5-drop, 4-drop. You know, it's actually a very, very sticky minion, which makes it very hard to remove, and you gain a lot of value from killing stuff with this guy. South Sea Deckhand, Gnomish Inventor, and Shield Bearer. Between card draw, more 4-drops, a shitty 1-drop, and a Deckhand, I think I'm going to go ahead and pick the Deckhand. Simply because this guy deals with a lot of 2-drops, and even 3-drops if no one plays anything on turn 2. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the Deckhand. We're going to have really high curve here. Really, really centered mid-range curve. We don't need another 4-drop here. Even though the effect is very good, we don't need to draw cards. This looks like the kind of deck that keeps a lot of cards in hand. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the Worgen here. We've already discussed the Tomb Spider, its problems, and the Maiden on the Lake, and the Raging Worgen benefits a lot from its effect. And it's 3 mana for 3/3, perfect stats. Not the perfect stat, but very good stats. And it's a serious problem in Arena, so a lot of players will deal with this initially, and if undealt with, this can be a very, very serious problem. So Raging Worgen it is. Competitive Spirit or Sludge Belcher, and I'm definitely going with the Sludge Belcher simply because my deck is tuned to something like late game, mid game. So the more value we get out of late game to mid game, the more we need minions to protect our late game to mid game, and that goes perfectly well with Sludge Belcher. So now we're in the last 10 cards of our draft here, and we're starting to look for synergy with our deck. Some cards do synergize well with each other, like the Technician and the Drake, the Sludge Belcher and the Draconic Crusher, or the Warhorse with a lot of the high drops here. You know, Amani Berserkers, pretty good card early on, not the best 2-drop. So we do have some synergy. We have no removal, no early game. So this is not the best of drafts, but it's a decent draft. I do say we did our best trying to draft this deck. Venture Core Mercenary, your minions cost 3 more, or Raging Worgen. I think for the purpose of this, I'm going to go ahead and pick Venture Core because our curve, you know, needs to be more balanced out. And since we were doing a lot of late game, we might as well use it because our late game looks like a lot of high value stuff. So I'm going to pick the Venture Core. So I'm definitely going to go the Argent Lance here. I'm not even going to think about the Colosseum Manager because its effect is terrible, and Cold Light Oracle has a lot of drawback to it, especially in Arena. You don't want to give your opponent free 2 cards. You know, you're not cashing in on any value when you give your opponent free 2 cards, unless this would be a mill deck, and this is not constructed, so therefore it is not a mill deck, and we really desperately need a 2-drop card, be it removal, be it a minion. And we don't run any removal in our deck, and the Battle Cry actually benefits from our deck because our deck runs a lot of heavy stuff. So we will usually reveal, you know, we will usually win the Joust, and when we do win the Joust, we get +1 durability, so it becomes a 2/3 weapon, and 2/3 weapons can kill 3 stuff, which is very good. When you kill 3 stuff with 1 weapon, that's a lot of value. So yeah, I'm definitely going to go with the Argent Lance. And the Spider Tank here, no question about it. It's powerhouse of a 3-drop. I might have gone with Noble. Maybe take the Noble Sack. Maybe, not sure. I actually might take Noble Sack because our 3-drop curve is disgustingly high. The amount of 3-drops you have is ridiculous. We'll be playing 3-drops every turn, so I'm going to take the Noble Sacrifice. And now we have another 2-drop. We're not even going to consider these 2. This Narrow Bar Weblord is shit. Absolute garbage, I'm sorry to say. Shielded Minibot is probably the best 2-drop in the game right now. It kills so much stuff. So much stuff. It's fantastic. So much value from Shielded Minibot. So I'm going to take the Shielded Minibot anyway. Definitely taking the Shielded Minibot. So this is what I was talking about, when your average, the common cards. This is a terrible card, this is a decent card, this is the best, one of the best arena cards out there. It's a fantastic weapon, one of the best weapons you have, and it's a free weapon. This is why Paladin's good in arena, so you get stuff like, Paladin cards are pretty good actually, so Noble Sack is pretty good, Minibot is amazing, Muster for Battle is pretty good as well, and then you have True Silver Champion. It's fantastic. I'm going to pick the True Silver here because we need more removal. We don't have enough removal. Frostwolf Grunt is not the best 2-drop, and I don't want a bad 2-drop. I want a good 2-drop, and I don't want another 3-drop. Especially we don't run any mechs. In fact, we do run the mini-bot, but I think the chances of this mini-bot synergizing with this Tinkertown are pretty low, so I'm going to go ahead and pick the Seal of Champions we denied 2 times already, because it synergizes really well with all the stuff that we're playing, make stuff really sticky, really hard to remove, since this is already a control deck. Equality is fantastic. Since this is a control deck, I think Equality is brilliant. I might have picked Scarlet Purifier, but our 3-drop curve is already looking ridiculous, and we can really benefit from Equality. Especially with Muster for Battle weapons, or just our hero power works well with Equality. If we do get a dude on board and we Equality, we get the value they don't. This is like not the best draft right here, not the best choices. When our last 3 cards, it's unfortunate that in our last 3 cards we get drafts like this, choices like this. The best minion here is Stormwind Knight, and the best card is Stormwind Knight. We don't want an eye for an eye. We want charge stuff, because this guy could actually be clean up, and when you have clean up, it's alright, it's decent. So Force Tank Max or Stone Splinter. Ooh, it's actually a hard choice because our deck is already looking defined, like a control deck. But I think I'm going to take the Stone Splinter Chug because we need more 2-drops. Only having 3 2-drops that do things actively instead of Equality is bad. So we need Stone Splinter Chug, definitely. And now our last card is probably the worst pick of all. We don't want to return this guy to hand, even though his stats are stickier. And we do have a secret, 1 secret, and we don't run any Murlocs. So I think I'm going to pick the Illuminator, just because it synergizes with our 1 soul secret and it's better than these 2. Okay. And so that is our arena draft. When you've drafted your arena, don't click play straight away. Don't do this mistake. Don't spam play. Before you start playing, just look at your curve. And by looking at your curve, you can make a small deduction. What type of deck is my deck? How does it synergize well with the cards I have? How should I play this deck? Should I play this deck by dropping everything I have on hand, or just play a more control, slow game? Or just go face every turn. So this deck is obviously not a tempo deck. It's obviously not an aggro deck. It's more of a mid-range control deck. So the way I would play this deck would be try to keep my high value minions while trying to maintain control of the board. Using stuff like Minibot early game, if I draw into it, to keep board, Muster for Battle to remove stuff, Seal of Champions to make stuff sticky, and from then on just trying to curve out control board and play my minions. So this definitely won't be, an early game destroyer, and most likely in an arena match, this would be the kind of deck that makes a comeback turn 4 to turn 5. Which is a bit sad because you usually get devastated turn 2, 1, 2, 3 by rogues, mages, warlocks, even shamans nowadays. But yeah, so that's how you draft an arena deck. So you have to look for card draw. We didn't draft any card draw because our deck doesn't really benefit from card draw. It plays a lot of heavy stuff. We have so many 4-drops, 5-drops, 3-drops that we probably are going to keep a lot of them in hand. We're not going to be dumping our hand, so we won't need a lot of card draw. Removal, this deck runs 3 removal cards: Equality, True Silver Champion, and Argent Lance, and they all work very, very well with this deck. And early game tempo, we don't have that. Unfortunately, we weren't able to draft early game tempo. Mid-range stuff, we did draft. We drafted excessive mid-range minions. And late game, we do have a bit of late game. In fact, more late game than most arena decks do have. So that's that. That's Cancer Lord out for you. This commentary has been more pleasing than I thought it would be. I hope you've learned something today from how to draft an arena deck. I'm not going to go ahead and click play because I think this video is way too long already. I'm sorry if I've bored you. And yes, so that's that. I'll see you next video. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you've enjoyed my video so far. Cancer Lord out. Peace.